Hello, and welcome to week 4, lab 3. So we're going to talk about your theory for a little bit, and then we're actually going to do the lab together. On a side note, I did like 90% of the lab on the first run through, maybe 80%, something like that. But the last little bit, it just looked like a pain in the butt to undo and redo. So I'm just going to kind of do it, and if I have to pause, then I have to pause and like figure stuff out. And I'll let you know what the solution is. That's just the way it is. On a side note, before we begin, you can see I'm logged into my router in EC2 in AWS, right? And I've got everything started up. And I started everything up, and I looked at my IP tables on my router, and I realized that the stuff that I set up in the previous lab that I'd already redone once before, for some reason did not persist through reboot, even though I issued sudo iptable save, dash save, iptables dash save, which should have done it. I remember with CentOS, you used to have to run this instead, and this is like going back, oh god, to like 2015, 2016, something like that. So sudo /sbin/service iptables save. For some reason, this wouldn't save it properly. Sorry, not this one. This one doesn't work. This one. That's the one that's syntactically correct. Try this if you're having that problem, and maybe it'll fix it. I haven't rebooted, so I don't know. But it's worked in the past. And hey, if that didn't work, we'll figure it out together, right? Because that's what we do. We're all in this together. Sound good? Hopefully. So, we're going to actually do some really, really cool stuff this week. And I say that like we haven't done some really cool stuff every week, right? We've been doing really cool stuff every week in this course. We're playing around with AWS. We're building instances in the cloud. We're doing all kinds of cool stuff in a live cloud. I think it's cool anyway, because I didn't get to do this as a student, and it's great. Yeah, we're just going to keep building on that. We're going to do some more, I think, really interesting stuff. But I'm going to give you a little bit of theory first about what we're doing, so it makes a bit more sense. At least that's the intention. I think it will. So, this week in Lab 4, or Lab 3, Week 4, we're going to set up what AWS calls Elastic Block Storage, or EBS. And you're probably wondering what on earth that is. And the AWS documentation is not super great at explaining it, or how it works. But it's essentially storage as a service, right? So you can create your storage. Think in terms of a hard drive, right, for a second, like a physical hard drive. Only this is cloud-based, right? So you can create this in a centralized way that exists within your cloud and attach it to any instance you want. And if you delete the instance, the storage that you created in the Elastic Block Storage is not deleted. So the data is not lost. A cool thing about Elastic Block Storage volumes is they're equivalent to hot pluggable drives, meaning you can add them to the instance while it's still running, and the operating system will actually recognize it without rebooting. Doesn't that sound awesome? I think it's pretty awesome. We're going to, once we get that set up, we're going to set up Apache, which is an open source web server that I'm not sure if you used in OPS 245, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit. You may or may not have heard about it. It's an open source web server. It's been around a really long time. In fact, it came out in originally, it released in 1995. It's completely open source, and it's available cross-platform. So you can run it in Windows, Linux, Unix, whatever. Doesn't matter. And it's a very, very popular web server. In fact, we can check out the current usage statistics, at least for the ones that we know about. This website is W3Techs, so this is provided by the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, and they maintain the standards that we use on the internet. You know, the languages we use, HTML, CSS, uh, PHP. I think they do some stuff with PHP anyway. Anyway, they have this really cool page with statistics for all kinds of stuff. I think it's great. So this is servers where they can determine what they're using. And look at that. Apache is powering in and around about a third of the web. Nginx is a little bit more popular right now. They kind of keep jumping up and down. Sometimes Apache's in the lead, sometimes Nginx is in the lead. And Microsoft IIS, which you would have used before, like, look how low that is. It's not even 6% currently. And this is the current usage statistics for this month. So that's pretty awesome. We can also look at a whole bunch of other stuff here. If you're curious, you can poke around. Just pause and check the link out, or I might remember to stick it underneath in the video as a link. But yeah, we look at operating systems, and we can see, like, look at that, Unix and Linux blows Windows away. It's just a cool thing, right? So, are we learning a useful thing with Apache? Hell yeah, we are, because it powers about a third of the internet. That's pretty substantial. Now, Apache is installed by default in Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or RHEL for short. But it's not installed in Fedora by default, and that's the basis for Amazon Linux. You're going to need to install it using Yum in the lab. I've already done it on the machine I'm going to be using, but I'm going to have to do it again when I build a new one, and I didn't do the delete it and build a new one part of the lab. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to finish building out WW. We're going to install Apache, we're going to install PHP, we're going to set up a basic website in PHP, which I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And we're going to check it out. We're going to do some port forwarding on our router to forward HTTP packets to our web server. And then once it's fully functional, we're actually going to delete it and then recreate it. And because we save everything on that elastic block storage, we just reattach that to the new instance, and everything's there. It's pretty awesome. The downside is, yeah, we got to redo a bit of work, right? We got to redo, installing the operating system, setting up our user, that stuff. But it's good practice. Don't be afraid of that. Anyway, so we're going to mention we are going to install Apache as our web server. We're then going to install PHP, and we're going to create a very simple website using PHP. And I know this isn't a web design course, but as a side note, I teach an Introduction to Web Design course over at Centennial. It's a front-end web design course where we focus on HTML5 and CSS3. That's generally what you hear referred to as front-end web design, usually JavaScript or some of the JavaScript frameworks like jQuery. I'm trying to think of some other popular ones because jQuery is kind of old. But there's a bunch of JavaScript frameworks that are popular for that. That's considered front-end web design. PHP is what we call in industry back-end web design or server-side scripting. So it runs on the server, and its output is displayed in the browser as HTML. Why am I mentioning this? Well, it's good to understand what you're doing, right? But also, if you decide you want to get into web design for whatever reason, PHP is actually a pretty solid language to know. And why do I say that? Well, again, from that W3 Tech's website that I pulled the server statistics from a minute ago. Look at that. Look at how popular PHP is. Again, this is on the websites where we can determine reliably what they're using, right? But PHP powers 77.4% of the web as of this month, current statistics. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Why is it that popular? Because it's been around for a long time, and it's open source. That's pretty much it. And it works cross-platform, whereas ASP.NET, you got to run in Windows. You can technically run it on Linux with Apache. At least I've heard of that working, but it's not an easy thing. Not an easy thing. So, if you're gonna think about getting into web design for whatever reason, PHP is probably the language you want to learn. Facebook coded in PHP on the back end, just as an example. A lot of companies use it. Anyway, pause for a minute, get some water, and we'll continue. Right. So we are going to set up this web server, configure it, make it fully functional, install PHP, create a website with the Elastic Block Store and everything. And then we're going to set up port forwarding. I think we're actually going to do that first. We're going to set up some port forwarding on our router VM, which is already running, which is going to forward HTTP packets, not HTTPS, because we're not setting that up, which uses port 80 by default, to the web server, which is going to be www, and that's the one we created last week. And then once everything works and we tested it and we know everything's fully functional, we're going to delete it, and we're going to build it again as www and attach our Elastic Block Store, which has all of the website files on it that we've already created, and it should be a good time. Sound good? Let's get into it, shall we? Forgive me for a second. I just have to go find the labs. So I'm SSH'd into the router, and that's not actually where I want to be. So let me get out of there. I'm going to hit up twice because I already SSH'd into my other instance to make sure everything works, and boom, there it is. It's good to go. So my server's up and running. That's totally fine. And the first thing you're going to want to do is install Apache, which is HTTPD, using yum. Now I've already done it, but I'm going to show you the command just because it's not in the lab, and it should be an easy one to figure out. Sudo yum-y install HTTPD, which is Apache. It's the HTTP daemon is what it stands for. So you need sudo, because we shouldn't switch to root to do that, right? It's not a good thing. -y will auto assume yes. It's a handy thing to include in there because we know we're going to want to install it, so just throw it in and it just does it. And let's just get out of there. I know I could have cleared my command line, but Control-C worked there. You're going to want to go ahead and do that first. I've already done it. It's already there. It's already running. So I'm not going to bother. It should already be running. I'll test it later. So we're going to configure this server to act as a web server. And the most important thing we're learning about in this lab is managing the Elastic Block Storage in AWS. It's one of the types of storage available in AWS. So this looks like any other block storage device, like a hard drive positioned in an operating system, but it's in AWS. And of course it's not a partition, right? It's not a hard drive. It's not an LVM logical volume. Its implementation details, not 100% sure on, because they don't really matter to us. But it's storage as a service. And it should be familiar, at least somewhat, in its implementation in the way that we can create and expand volumes in it, because you've literally done this in OPS 245. The commands that we're going to use to do that are pretty much the same as how we created virtual hard drives in OPS 245 and attached them to existing VMs. We're just doing it in the cloud. Awesome, huh? So, you learned some useful stuff. So we're going to go first to volumes under Elastic Block Store. So we see we're in EC2. Remember I showed you how to pin that just in case you want to. Under Elastic Block Store, I can click on volumes. I didn't pin this because it didn't look like something we're going to be using a huge amount. And actually I'm not sure you can pin that one. And notice there's like a whole bunch of stuff already here. Well, these are, I've got a ton of VMs spun up because I've done some of the labs a couple times. But these are virtual hard drives that are attached to your existing VMs that have the operating system and all the contents of your existing instances or VMs. Make sense? So we're going to create a new one. And it's pretty easy. We click Create Volume. You should check out the info button on each one. I did it. There's some useful stuff to learn on each one, but it's going to be a bit overwhelming, and that's totally okay. We're going to set its size to 1 gig. We're going to leave pretty much everything else untouched. We're not going to encrypt the volume, and we're going to set its name. So we go to tags here and add tag. We're going to set name and set its value to www-data. And I can't remember if that has to be. I think I did an uppercase N last time. Honestly, I don't think it matters, but it might. And it's uppercased in the lab, so I'm just going to do it uppercase there. And make sure it's in US East 1A. And then just, boom, click Create Volume. You're good to go. So we see it's created. We've got 1 gig. It's creating it right now. So if we refresh this in a little bit, we should see it's available. So that means it can be attached to a machine. If it's attached to an instance, then we see it's in use. Okay. So the name of this doesn't really matter, but we're going to attach it to our VM, and we don't even have to reboot because it's hot pluggable. So that's pretty great. So let's go back to our command line. I'm here. I'm logged in already. This is in the lab instructions, so don't worry too much. And let's do a sudo. Let me just clear my screen. So like everything's up at the top and it looks good. And all of these are in the screenshot. So sudo ls /dev/sd star. And we see we have SDA and SDA1. Hold on a second, did I miss a step? I'm going to pause for a second. I think I missed a step. Give me just a minute. And, well, we'll fix it. I did miss a step, and I figured it out as soon as I looked at the instructions. I didn't attach it to the VM. So let's do that. We've got our volume here. We're going to go to Actions, Attach Volume. See, it helps when you do that. Click the drop down on your instance here and select WW, which is running. You can give it a name here, it doesn't matter. It looks like the default was SDF /dev/SDF. That's a handy thing. We're just going to stick with the default there. But you can give it a name, which is good to know. I just stick with the default there, and that's totally fine. Click Attach Volume. Alright, so I was talking. I just realized I've been paused for, I don't know, like 10 minutes. Something stupid. So I'm going to try to go back and remember what I did. And I got all the commands here, so that's good. But, like, I talked about a bunch of stuff. We checked, or sorry, I checked, I issued sudo ls /dev/sd star before I mounted anything. Before I attached the LVM. And that was what went wrong. I hadn't attached it. The LVM, the block storage, the elastic block storage. And we saw, there's the standard ones there, right? We didn't have dev SDF, which was shown in the elastic block storage device we created. After I attached it, I ran the same command again, and boom, it shows up. All of these commands, incidentally, are in the screenshot on the lab. He just ran them with root instead of sudo. You should use sudo. I'm going to use sudo. It's good practice. We've talked about why. Uh, I issued sudo ls -l dev sd star, and I can see where they're mapped to. And then I ran sudo block dev. I made a typo there. Get size 64 on that partition. It's located in dev because it's a device, right? And note that this output here is in kilobytes, but it's a gig that we created, right? So that's what 1 gigabyte looks like in kilobytes. And then we ran vg create with the volume group vg underscore www and the physical volume of /dev/xvdf. This is right in the screenshot in the lab. And we see the physical volume created, the volume group created. If you don't get that, check for an error in your syntax. Then we used lv create to create a logical volume. We called it lv underscore www. We give it a label. Pretty sure that's what that does anyway, if I recall correctly. 100% free. And vg underscore www, and we see it's there. Then we issued sudo blkid to make sure that everything looks good. So we see it's there, and most importantly, its type here is an LV2 member. Then I did a sudo ls-l on dev mapper that volume group that we created, and we can see it's there. And once it's there, we can format it. So that's what this command here does. Sudo mkfs make file system .ext4. That's the file format we want. It formatted in. Give it a label and a path to where it is, and it should run pretty quick, and we see all this stuff pop up. So that kind of catches us up to where we were, and I was about to, well, I was just starting to talk about var www, and I thought, you know what, I should go and make sure that that I'm actually unpaused, and lo and behold, I was not. So we're going to mount our new file system on var www, but we need to know what that is, right? It's in /var, and you should remember from ULI 101 that that's short for variable, right? Variable length data that's going to change in size. www, well, that's World Wide Web, right? Makes sense. So what would this file be used for? Well, normally, this file is the location that's referred to as document root in Apache. So this is the default location on the server for web files, whether they're index HTML, PHP, Python, something else that you're developing in, doesn't matter. You put your website in this folder, basically. And it's not just Apache that works this way. Every web server that I've ever worked with works this way. It has a document root where stuff is stored. Now, there's a couple interesting things that you may or may not be familiar with about how web servers work and how document root works specifically. I don't think I said that correctly. By default, if your document root has an index page, index.html or index.php or index with any other extension. And of course, if you're running PHP, you have to have PHP installed on the system. And you type in the URL or the fully qualified domain name for the server, you're going to get that page. If document root does not contain those things, and the server is configured to give it to you, you'll get a directory listing in the web browser, which is great. If it's not configured to do that, you're going to get nothing. So that's why we have to create an index page. And this is the way things are done, right? So let's check that out. We're going to try mounting our new file system that we just created. We're going to try to mount it on var/www. So we see there's some stuff there. We don't care about what's there. That's the default stuff that you get with Apache, which I installed off screen. You didn't see it. So we're going to issue sudo mount dev mapper vg, and I'm just going to hit tab to autocomplete because I'm lazy and that's a long string. And where do we want to mount it to? So that's we're mounting, that's our source. We're going to mount it to the destination /var /www. And now, if we do an ls-al or la, doesn't matter which way, look at that. We see we get our new stuff. And if we unmount it using the umount command, sudo, of course, or it's going to fail. And then we check out that file again. Look at that. Our other stuff is still there. So that's good. We know that everything mounts properly and unmounts properly now. So, and the reason we tested this because if this failed, we don't want to change fstab. If we did change fstab and this did fail, our machine might not boot. We really don't want that to happen to our instance, right? Even though we're going to delete it later, we're going to do a whole bunch of shit first. And we want to make sure everything boots. So everything looks good. We're going to modify fstab. So sudo, and you should have used this in OPS 245. Sudo vi etc fstab. And there we go. Now we don't want to mess up that or modify that first line at all, because that might make our instance not boot, and that would be a bad thing. fstab is actually short for file system table, and this is where we list files, directories, hard drives, partitions, right, that we want mounted on boot. And there's a particular format for these. If you mess up the format, it's not going to work. And not only is it not going to work, your VM may or may not boot. And I know I should be calling it an instance, but like the concept works the same either way, right? Whether it's an instance or a VM, same thing, same concept. Even if it's like a physical server, same concept. If you mess up this file, shit's not going to work. It's just going to go bad. So we're going to add at the bottom of this /dev /mapper and I can't hit tab here to autocomplete vg underscore www dash lv underscore www. So that's what we're mounting. Where do we want it mounted? We want it mounted on var www. Its file system type is ext4. We want it mounted with the default permissions. And I don't remember offhand what the 00 does. That looks good. I don't think I messed anything up. We'll find out really quickly. Because we're going to test it before we reboot. We don't want it to find out when we reboot our machine that it doesn't boot, right? Because we don't want to have to go back and start all this stuff again. So we edited that. We're going to try to mount it. So sudo mount var www. Because all of the stuff is in the fstab file, that should work. And if we do sudo ls var www, we actually didn't need sudo there. We see it worked, right? There's our lost and found. That's all that's in there, and that's fine. We're going to put some stuff in there. Also, you might want to try issuing the command mount and piping it to a grep for www. I recommend using the grep here because otherwise you're going to get a whole bunch of output on your screen. And we can see that it's mounted. There's our source. There's our destination, so where we actually want it mounted to. That's our representation of that physical drive in the file system. We see its type. It's mounted. If you don't see this, if this does not work, do not reboot, because there's a really good chance that your instance won't boot, and then you're going to have to start from scratch. If this works, time to reboot and see if everything works. Yay. Scary time. So sudo, we need sudo because there's other users logged in possibly to the system. Reboot. And in fact, just to like show you why we need sudo here, let's see what happens when I type reboot. Look at that. Must be root. I got an error. Always read your error messages. Sudo reboot. And there we go. Give that a couple minutes to come back up. And in fact, we can just go check EC2 and see what's going on. And I'm going to pause for some water while we do that. So I'm back over in EC2. I unpaused. And we can see it's initializing, so it should be up soon. Oh, it looks like it's up now. So I should be able to just hit up. And I should be in... Did I hit enter? And I might need to give it a minute. There we go. Wasn't quite up yet. Even though it said it was up. So we're good to go. Great. Just give me a second to get what I need in the right spot. Oops. That's my lab instructions off my other screen. Tried to snap it to the side and it didn't work. You guys know that you can snap things to the side, left and right of any screen with Windows and then the left or right button. And that works in Linux too. It's just a handy thing. Just kind of as a heads up. So we created an elastic block storage device. We mounted it to our server on boot. That's pretty awesome. Now, we're ready to create a simple web page. So let's do that. First, we're going to look at the Apache configuration file. So sudo vi etc httpd conf httpd.conf. And we're going to look for document root, which is right here up at the top. And it looks like I've already done this. This should be set, or no, it's already set. Sorry. It's set to var www.html. Well, that doesn't exist, right? So we need to create it. So let's go do that. Just get out of there. Q exclamation mark. We're not changing anything. If we do a sudo ls var www, we see nothing there, right? Just that lost and found thing. So let's create that directory. Mkdir var www html. I think this might fail because I think I need sudo here. Look at that. So hit up, stick sudo in front. We're good to go. Do an ls to confirm it worked. Whoops. Well, it definitely worked because it. I didn't hit up. I hit up one too many, or one too few times. And then we're going to create a file with some PHP in it. PHP is a really cool thing. If you don't know it, well, I'm going to show you some right now. And if you don't know HTML, I'm going to show you some of that too. So we're going to create a plain text file. We're not going to create it as root. Actually, I think we have to first. So sudo, let's try it. Let's see if this works. I think we're going to get an error. So vi var www html index.php. So you know what that file name means now, right? Because I explained that. It's going to be a PHP file. Oh, it did work. Let's just :x before I do anything. Make sure I can actually see it. Okay, let's try sticking some stuff in there. I'm going to get rid of this stuff, so I don't really care. That was supposed to be test. Yeah, see? Knew we had a problem. That's why I didn't get too far ahead. So let's get out of here. Let's try that again. Only, let's stick sudo in front of that. So we're going to sudo, whoops, sorry, not sudo, we're in here. We're going to type hello, my web server still works. Whoops, I hit some weird shit. I think I hit my the Windows button on my wife's keyboard, and it popped open Windows on my VM. We're going to insert a break here. It's an HTML5 break. If this shows the current date and time, PHP works too. Colon, insert another break. And then we're going to actually call PHP. Now the neat thing about PHP is you can embed it right in an HTML file. And if you don't know HTML, well, maybe that's not exciting, but I think it's exciting. And you do that with the opening and closing brackets that are like that. So angle bracket question mark PHP is your opening tag. Question mark angle bracket is the closing tag. And in there, we can put some PHP code, which is going to execute on the server and return whatever its value is that we're going to see in our browser. So we're going to call a built-in function in PHP, and that's system. So we're passing a command to the operating system within Apache to execute. And the command that we're going to pass it is the date command, which you've used before. Ends with a semicolon, and you don't technically need the space there at the end, I don't think, but it's a good thing. So let's save that. Let's start Apache, and let's test it. So we're going to do a few things first. Remember, I already said we should be using root for this, and we're going to fix that, right? We're going to start Apache. Well, before we start Apache, sorry, we're going to change owner on this directory to your user. And note, I'm using the default EC2 user. I didn't even make my Seneca ID user. That's because we're throwing this away. So I'm going to do that on the next one, just to make sure everything works, right? So we got our page here. We need to sudo chown -r, and this is going to be ec2-user /var/www/html. That will change owner on that directory and its entire contents to our user. We're going to enable HTTPD, so that'll make it start on boot. That's what enable does using systemctl. You should have done this last semester. Sudo systemctl start HTTPD. And then we're going to look at this in a really old school way, because you're probably thinking to yourself, well, how the hell am I going to browse a web page from a command line? Like, that's not going to work, right? And we don't have any port forwarding set up. This doesn't have any access to it, so we need to do that. So we're going to install a program called Links, Links. Mine's already installed, so this is going to fail, but I'll type the command in anyway. Sudo yum-y install links, just so you see it. See, already installed, nothing to do. This is a really ghetto way of looking at stuff, but it's kind of interesting. So we've got a web page. It's loaded from localhost, or it should load from localhost, and that's going to mean our server works. So the way you run links from the command line, just type links, http://localhost. And look at that, it worked. Now yours won't work this way. You're going to get the default Apache test page instead. And the reason yours won't work this way is because PHP wasn't installed. So you need to do that. So just sudo yum -y install php. I'm going to get out of this with Q. I want to say yes. Like super ghetto, right? Sudo yum -y install php. Again, this is going to fail because I already installed it. And then try it again. You shouldn't even need the /index.php because it's going to give it to you. But you can type it. And there we go. We see there's our thing. And there's our PHP running. So the time and date stamp worked. So PHP is working. So if that doesn't work, install PHP, restart Apache, everything should work. You're good to go. Let's get the hell out of there. Now links is useful for basic testing, right? But you browse the internet all the time. You don't want people having to browse or use that to browse your internet, right? You want them to use a proper web browser, a real one, like Firefox or Chrome. I use Chromium. That's what I've installed here, which is open source Chrome. Why do I use Chromium? Well, if you go check out W3 Schools, they've got some statistics on this. They show the most popular browsers. Chrome is like 80% of the market right now. Firefox used to be really big. I know we promote Firefox a lot at Seneca because we have a partnership in CDOT with Mozilla, so part of it is developed here. Not sure if you knew that. You should have by now, but maybe you didn't, so who knows. If you didn't, you just learned something new. So we push Firefox a lot here, but it's not as popular as it once was, unfortunately. So we're going to do some stuff, right? Because our server doesn't have a public IP, right? We want everything going through the router. So I'm going to exit here, leave it running, and SSH back into my router. And I'm going to add another IP tables rule to forward incoming TCP packets from port 80 to the new server that I just set up, and then we should see our web page in a browser. Sudo iptables -t nat -i pre-routing -p tcp -d port 80 -j for jump dnat -2 and then our IP address, which of course is 10.3.45.11 : so we're specifying port 80. And we want to save that. And that should do that. Look at that. So we're good to go. You're also going to need to go in and add some security groups. I've already done this, but I'm going to show you what they look like. Or not add some security groups, modify some security groups. So we're going to modify the router security group, which is right here. Nope, that's the wrong one. Right here. This is the problem with doing things twice, and this is why I'm not doing that this week. So I added a new rule. Just click to edit inbound rules, and then add a rule. I want to cancel this because like I've already done this, right? So I added this one here for HTTP, so that's the just from the drop-down menu. Protocol TCP, port range 80, source quad 0 again, and I gave it this description, web port forwarding. So that's going to allow incoming traffic to the router, but we also have to allow incoming traffic on our www security group, which I've done that here. I know I just said here, but like where the hell is it? There it is. So I added a rule. We see we've got our SSH rule from before. That works. I added another one for HTTP, which is port 80. And if you just select the drop down here, I think you just select HTTP like that. And the source here is the security group, so you can just look that up here. I'm just not going to touch anything because that works. There we go. So that should work. If we look at our router's public IP, so we go into instances, and we can use that elastic IP here. We type that in, or copy paste. It's not going to let me copy paste, is it? Oh, gotta do it that way, right? I was trying to select it. I should get my web page. Look at that. It says it's not secure. That's fine because we're using HTTP, so everything's in plain text over the internet. We didn't install SSL. We didn't configure HTTPS. We didn't do any of that, right? This is like basic stuff. But everything worked. Yay. Sound good so far? Hopefully. And as always, if you've got questions, like bring them to the lab. That's what we're there for. So, we have to go back now into our web server and do some stuff. So let's get out of the router. Let's SSH back into our web server. I should probably change that user at some point. I'm going to do it in the one that we're going to keep. Like, why do it here, right? That's why I didn't even bother installing updates here. I'm going to do that later. So we're going to create a web page. We're going to create a better web page. This is not a web development course, and you haven't taken a web development course, I don't think. Maybe as a professional option or something, but like not as part of the curriculum. Because we used to do some web design stuff in CNS and CTY, but that's like long gone. But you should learn a couple basic things, because like it's a handy, cool thing to pick up. HTML pages, which that's what your PHP file will generate, right? Everything it generates is read in HTML, which is interpreted by your browser. They should follow a basic set of rules and structure. They technically don't have to. I tell this to my web design students all the time. You can technically write everything on one line with HTML, and the browser doesn't give a shit. It'll display it if the syntax is correct. But we care, and like I care, right? If I'm coming over to help a student and they do that, and they say, "Hey, sir, I got a problem with my code." My policy, I tell them this up front, I'm walking away. You're not getting my help. So we should care for some properly structured HTML. PHP is commonly used by programmers. It's a backronym for personal homepage, or originally was. I've also heard the acronym hypertext preprocessor thrown around for PHP. I think I like personal homepage better. That's what it was originally called. It makes sense. It's free. It's open source. It's common. It's very common. We saw, and we're going to write some PHP to query some metadata about our instance that AWS has, but the instance itself does not. It's pretty cool. So let's open that PHP file that we created. We don't need sudo for this, right? var www html index.php, and we're just going to get rid of everything that's there. Well, actually, we're not technically going to just get rid of it because we're going to use some of this stuff again. So let's do that. And I'm going to throw some stuff in here that's not in the lab because, I mean, I teach web design. I developed a web design course at Centennial. I'm missing an exclamation mark. Technically, and this is not in the lab, whoops, the top line should be the document type. It tells the browser what version of HTML you are using. That's the HTML5 doc type. This is not in the lab instructions, I'm just throwing it in. HTML, so I'm just going to set up my basic structure here. Head. We're going to fill this in a minute. Whoops, I didn't want to body, and I'm going to explain this in a second too. I'm going to stick this down here and close our body tag and close our HTML. I tend to do this when I create a web page. Now, what the hell does all that stuff mean? Well, everything between the opening and closing HTML tags is our web page. And the doc type simply tells the browser which version of HTML you're using. We're using HTML5, that's the HTML5 doc type. Other versions of HTML5, other versions of HTML have different doc types associated with them. Go check out W3 Schools. Just Google W3 Schools. You'll find it. They've got all this stuff totally for free, and they're the authoritative source because they maintain the language. Now, your web page is divided into two sections, your head and your body. Stuff in the head doesn't show up in the page, with the exception of the title parameter. If you throw that in, we're not throwing that in this week, and that's what shows up in the title bar of your browser. Everything that is in the body, between that opening and closing body tag, is what shows up on your page. Proper style dictates that technically all of that should be indented once for decent formatting. So I'm going to try to format this decent because I should show you some good stuff, right? Whoops, that's not where I want to be. I'm in the head. Now, something I'm going to do that you don't commonly write CSS this way. Usually you do it as an external style sheet, but I'm going to embed some CSS in the head. And I'm going to do that using the style tag. So within our style block, we're going to embed some CSS here. Now, why don't you usually do it this way? Well, because it applies to this particular page. And if you're creating a 100-page website and you want to change something, you got to change that on every page. It's not a great plan, right? So you can actually do that as a separate file and link that file to your web pages with one line. It's all gives you one common place for centralized administration, which is a good thing, right? We're network admins. We should like centralized administration. Programmers like that concept too, or should. So body. So this is the selector. This is going to apply to the body tag. We're going to set the background color. Note it uses the American spelling. Powder blue. There are a subset of like colors you can actually type here, but usually use hex color codes. And again, in the lab, there's no space here, right? I put a space in. It doesn't matter. I think the space makes it easier to read, so I threw it in. Border spacing, 1 cm, 0 cm, semicolon. CSS statements end in a semicolon. If you miss a semicolon, it's just not going to work. It's not even going to throw an error. It's just not going to work. Kind of sucks to troubleshoot. There's tools out there that'll let you troubleshoot that. We're going to set the color to blue. So that's our font color. That's for our H2. So that's the heading 2 that we're going to create one, but we haven't created one yet. Our table headings. TH tag, we're going to align the text left. Text align left. Whoops. Need my curly brace or this is not going to work. Paragraphs. So paragraph tag, we're going to set those to color red and font weight bold. And our style block is done. Our head closes. Then we go into our body. This stuff stays here, but we're going to add some stuff below this. So we're going to give it a heading 2. It's really, technically that should be an H1, but whatever, I'm going with it. Instance info. I say it should be an H1 if anyone's curious. There's H1 through H6 are the different levels of headings, and you're supposed to structure your document appropriately using H1 as the most important and H6 as the least important. This is good enough. Like, we're not worried about proper web design here, but I teach it, and I've taught it for a long time at Centennial, so I'm just gonna talk about it. We're gonna insert a table. We're gonna do a table row here. Whoops, and I'm gonna format this properly again, because well, that's just the way I am. Table heading, configuration, close our table heading. I think it reads better too if it's properly indented. Its value, close that, close our row, open a new row. So we're going to use the TD tag for table data. We're going to set this one to private IP. Whoops. And that's the P tag there. That's the paragraph tag. Private IP. Close our cell, our table data. That's all it is, right? It's a cell. Another new cell. Now we're going to call some PHP. So curly brace, PHP, system. Whoops. If we don't spell this right, it ain't gonna work. System, curl, http://169.254.169.254. Whoops. And you're probably looking at this going, hey, that's a weird IP address. Never seen that before. Or maybe you have seen that before. It looks like an APIPA address, right? I did some digging around in the documentation again, and from what I can tell, it looks like AWS uses this address range for instance metadata and stuff like that. So latest metadata, which you can kind of figure that out from this code too, right? Local-IPv4. Close the curly bracket, or close the round bracket, hit a semicolon, because that terminates our PHP statement. And we need to close our PHP tag, and we need to close our cell. Whoops. That's not going to work. Again, not used to my wife's keyboard. Close our row, new row, new cell. This is really slowing me down. Paragraph tag, public IP. Now I could omit the paragraph tag here technically, but then that lovely styling we did up there just wouldn't show up anywhere. So, may as well throw it in. Another PHP call here. System. We're calling the system function again. Curl http://169.254. Whoops. .169.2. Oops. 254 slash latest slash meta dash data slash public dash IPv4. Curly brace, semicolon, close our PHP, close our table data, our cell, right? Close our row, and close our table. Well, that was a lot of typing. It's 30 lines on a keyboard that I'm not so used to. Now, the nice thing about this is, normally when you change a config file, you have to restart, right? We don't. We didn't change a config file. We just changed, oops, and I actually don't even, did I close my window before? Reopen, close tab? Yeah, there we go. And if it doesn't come up right away, Control F5, or just refresh. And look at that. It worked, but I didn't see the public IP show up there. That's interesting. That's really interesting. Because that should have. Let's go double check and make sure that I didn't muck up my PHP a bit. .169-254.169-254- latest metadata public-IPv4. Yeah, it looks fine. Weird. That worked in the lab. Like when I did it the first time. Don't know why it didn't work the second time. I'm gonna pause and like figure that out off camera. Yeah, I don't know. Weird. Should have something there. Weird. Weird, weird, weird. Because that worked before. I'm not gonna spend your lecture messing around with it. Play around with it in the lab, get it to work, and maybe I'll figure out what I did wrong. Anyway, on to the next part. So our web server is accessible from anywhere through the router. So it shouldn't have a public IP really associated with it at all. And we can kind of play around and look at how to remove this, but this also gives you a chance to think about and plan in advance as much as you can. And when we recreate this instance in a little bit, we're going to not give it a public IP, in fact. And then we're just going to port forward to the private IP. So if we look in the console navigation, and we look for that NIC, which should be somewhere. EC2 network interfaces. We don't need our instances here. I don't see it along the side. Oh, network interfaces down here. Network and security. It's late. It's been a long day, can you tell? And we're looking for our NIC, so it should be ww-NIC. Let's figure out which one it is. Router NIC, router NIC. Huh. Not sure which one it is. Anyway, play around with it. You're gonna find out that you can't remove the public IP from it, like in a weird way. There's no option for that. So the only way to actually do that is to delete the VM and redo everything we just did. Well, let's not be silly. We don't need to redo everything, right? Because we have all of our website stuff done on that logical volume that's on the Elastic Block Storage device. So that's fine. So we're going to we're just going to have to reinstall Apache and PHP, which you didn't see me do anyway. So let's go do that. We're going to go delete our VM. And this is where I may have to pause a few times because I didn't do this, so I might stumble on a few things and have to figure it out. And I don't want, again, I want a smooth experience for you, right? So we're going to delete this. Now, how on earth do you do that here? Well, let's turn it off first because we're still SSH'd into it. Yeah, we're still looking at this, right? So let's get out of here. Because that might do weird things to our terminal. You technically don't have to shut it off. Whoops, I'm going to shut it off. And in fact, I've got that there. Well, I'm just going to leave that for now, because this we can refresh here and it should work when we're done. That's fine. Now that it's rebooting, or it's shutting down, we're going to destroy it. So select the instance, make sure you select the correct one, because you don't want to delete the wrong one. And the terminology for that is terminate instance. So we click on instance state, we click terminate instance, and it's gone. And note, we do not want to delete the Elastic block store. So just ignore that. It's gone. It might take it a few minutes to disappear from our list, but it will disappear from our list. So it's going to be shut down and deleted. It takes some time though. It eventually disappears. The virtual disk is deleted. The Elastic block store that we created is not, so that's great. Because if we go to our Elastic block store, go to our volumes, we should look and we see, hey, isn't that nice? It's still there. Now it's still there, but we want to, we probably want to unattach that. It's probably going to do it on its own. I don't know. We'll see. We might not have to disassociate that and then reassociate it with it, or maybe we will. Now we're going to go into our subnets in VPC, in the VPC console, and again I pinned that to the top, but you can scroll to it if you want to get to it that way. We're going to edit the OPS 345 subnet that we created. Let me use the right one. I should probably just delete that other one. So we're going to go in here. Click on it. We see it's in our virtual private cloud. And we are going to edit this. Edit subnet settings in the action drop down. And we're going to check this enable auto assign public IPv4 address and hit save. So now we're not automatically going to get public IPs. And now we're going to go create a new instance. It should be pretty familiar to you. Let's get back out of here, back into EC2. Super handy if you've pinned that to the top, right? We're going to create a new instance, which we've done a few times. Launch instance. And then we're going to go through the standard stuff. We're going to give it the name www. Amazon Linux. That looks fine. That looks fine. Let's use our key pair because we want to be able to get in here. Go to our network settings. We want to select the existing security group. Oops. Let's go down. There we go. And that's going to be our WW security group, which, stupid VPC. Hold on. We don't want that. We want this one. There we go. And now it should come out. And we want to use our WW security group. Look at that. It wasn't deleted. That's handy. We're going to go to Advanced Network Configuration. And we're going to give it a primary IP of 10.3.45.11. And we're going to spin it up. So let's click Launch Instance. And once it's up, let's refresh here. So there we go. We see it's pending. give it a minute. I'm going to pause for some water. It's a good time to pause. Look at that, we're up to a little over an hour in our video so far. Alright, so I'm back. And if you're paying any attention to the timestamp in the bottom corner of my screen, you can see it's been a few minutes, but not super long. I just ended up doing a couple other things while I was up, waiting for this to reboot. So let's see. Looks like it's initialized now, so we should be able to SSH into it. The same way we got into the other one. And look, we get that warning again, right? So we need to run SSH. And the reason for that is, this is associated with the old instance, right? Home JSON, whoops, .ssh. Known underscore hosts. Whoops. Dash R. This is a complicated thing. We've done this before, right? We ran into this message before. 54.147.10.109, and it's a good message to get, because, like, if you're getting this and you didn't do something, well, you might be getting hacked right now. And that should be fine. And then we try this again. Say yes. And we're in. Great. That's awesome. So we're going to, we got our new instance up. We've done nothing here, right? We're going to do some basic stuff first that we've done previously. We are going to configure, we're going to add a new user, add them to sudo, and then remove the EC2 user and set the host name. Like we did this before, right? So, first of all, let's add our user. Sudo user add -m jason.carmen, and I didn't do this on the other VM because we didn't need it. And then let's get out of here and see if we can SSH using that user. I think we had to do some other stuff. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. And if you're not sure, like, look at your notes and look at the Lab 1 instructions. And we got permission denied. So let's go. Just gonna kind of skip back. Should duplicate that. That's the easier way instead of going all the way through. There we go. Go to Lab 1. Because we did that in Lab 1. So we added the user. We need to give them to add them to sudoers, right? So sudo vi etc sudoers .d 10 dash OPS 345 dash users. And we're going to give it jason.carmen all equals all, no password. Whoops, that's not going to work. You've done this before. Like, this shouldn't be horrible. Colon all. Let's save that. And we need to give them access to those new SSH keys, which is why that did not work. So sudo ls-al.ssh. We see it's there, so let's copy that. Sudo cp dash r dot ssh to, whoops, that's not going to work, to our new user, tilde, whoops, also not going to work, does not exist, helps when you type it correctly. So now we should be good. And we need to change owner on those as well, right? chown, recursively, jason.carmen, tilde, jason.carmen, .ssh. And let's exit. And then try again with the correct username. And we're in, so that's great. Let's also try sudo su minus, which we shouldn't really do, but hey, it worked. We switched to root, so sudo works. So we can delete the EC2 user to make this a little bit more secure. Sudo user del -r ec2 -user. Then we're going to set the host name. Sudo hostname ctl set -hostname, and we're setting that to, what are we setting that to? That's a good question. www.jason.carmen.ops345.ca, and that's good to go. Now, we need to install some software, right? We need to install HTTPD, PHP, probably install that links browser. But we've got a problem. You need a internet connection to install things in Linux through Yum, because everything's installed through an online repository. So we can temporarily allocate a public IP to this instance. So let's do that. So this is going to be this one here. Actions. Networking. I'm not in the right place. Give me a second, and let me play around with this. I'll be back, so your recording is a bit smoother. I found it. So it's in Elastic IPs, right? Under Network and Security. Uncheck what's there by default, and click Allocate Elastic IP, and we should be good to go. Sorry, I paused so I could cough off mic, and then I unpaused, and well, that didn't work. So we're going to give it a new public IP. We're going to add a tag to it. We're going to call it name, and its value is temporary IP, and we're going to associate this with our instance. And we're going to remove this after, because otherwise this is going to cost us a whole bunch of money. So we don't want to do that. Refresh. Clear our filter. There we go. We see both. So this one's allocated to that instance. This one's not allocated to anywhere. So we can now allocate it. Sorry, not allocate it. Associate it. Which we did this, right? So select the IP. Actions. Associate Elastic IP. We're going to give it to our www. Click Associate. And we should be good to go. So now, we go back. Good, I didn't get disconnected. gonna check and see. Think I should be fine. Sudo. Let's just try to ping, right? Ping 8.8.8.8. Look at that, we can ping Google. That's one of Google's DNS servers. Ping www.google.com. I did this before trying to run Yum, just because, like, this is basic testing, right? I could have tried Yum, but if it fails, because we don't have a public IP and like stuff isn't working, let me make sure I'm unmuted. Yeah, I am unmuted. Then it's just like more headache, right? So let's make sure everything works first before we try to do that. So we gave it that. We're going to install sudo yum-y install httpd php, and let's stick links in there. Why not? I mean, those are the three things that we used. And while we're in here, we also probably want to do a yum update. Because, again, this isn't going to have an IP for a while. Am I in the wrong instance? Nope, I'm fine, and it's updated, so that's good. Okay. Weird. Because I didn't run a yum update on this. Maybe that, I don't know, maybe that did everything. Yeah, it looks like it updated the kernel and stuff. So, I don't know. I was thinking an update would make sense, but yeah, it's fine. So we added our temporary IP. We're going to disassociate that in a little bit. And let's reattach our elastic block storage to this instance. So we're going to go into our volumes. This one here. Actions. Attach volume. We're going to attach it to www. There we go, it's SDF. So it's good to go. And we're going to go through the same steps to mount that we did above. Exact same steps. I'm going to do it again. I mean, if you want to like skip forward a little bit, feel free, because this is a video. That's the great thing about a video, right? I just want to show you everything works. So there we go. Sudo mount dev mapper vg, that nonsense, right? Var www. Do our ls again. Hey, look, it's there. Unmount. Sorry, umount. Whoops. Umount what, right? Var www. I forgot the argument. And that's fine. So we can edit fstab again. Sudo vi etc fstab. Go to the end. Remember, don't mess it up. Dev mapper vg underscore www dash lv underscore www to var www ext4 defaults 0 0. We're almost done. So like if you're thinking like, oh my god, this is a long one, I mean, it is a bit longer of a video, but we're almost done. So let's mount it. Var www. Remember, if this doesn't work, don't do stuff, right? So we see it's there. So we should see some output here. Get rid of the slash. We don't need that. It's a typo. So everything's good. We should be good. Let's reboot it, I guess. Just to make sure everything works. And while that's rebooting, we're going to, well, no, we're just going to wait. We're going to wait to do the last step. Because there's so little left to do. Oh, I didn't want to go there. I want to go to instances. And I'm just going to pause while that reboots. Just to, again, make the video a bit shorter. You don't need to listen to me needlessly talk. Right, so we're back up. Rebooting had a lot of effects on this. We see our hostname took. That's great. We should see if we do an ls on var www. HTML is there, right? That's great. So now we want to start Apache, and everything should be good. Sudo systemctl start httpd. And if we go to our browser, and there's a reason I left this open, we're just going to hit a refresh here. Or control F5. It works. Beautiful. Beautiful. I still don't know why it's not pulling this. Now we can go get rid of our IP. We don't need it. So we're going to go into our IPs, our Elastic IP, and we're going to disassociate that one. If you forget to do this, it's not the end of the world, but it's going to cost you money. So you should probably do it. Actions, disassociate IP. Yes. Make sure you get the right one too, right? Because that would be bad. Before I release that, let's make sure I got the right one, right? I should have got the right one because the other one's a 54. Yeah, I got rid of the right one. So now this one, we want to release this. Release Elastic IP. Release. And it's gone. Let's log in, see if everything works. Whoops. Well, that actually didn't make any difference, and it won't have made any difference there, right? But let's try our web page again in the browser. Refresh. So we see some not found stuff. We can clean that up. It's interesting that that came up there and not down here. It should have came up down there. So we're going to modify it. That's our last thing to do. var www html index.html. What the hell? Oh, dot. Should be .php, not HTML. It's late. I'm sleepy. It's been a long day. So we're going to modify this, and we're going to add this here. I think it's this here. See, don't know. Oh, I know why that wasn't showing up in the right spot. Oh, I did a dumb thing. Look at that. I made a typo. That's why it wasn't showing up. Oh, that's bad. Sudo chown. We did this as well. I guess I should change owner to that again, to my user. -r var json.carmen var www.html. And now, let's, whoops, ran that twice, getting tired. There, I was getting that error, changing read-only file. Let's try that. See if our stuff shows up properly, kind of a bit. Yeah, now it's in the right spot. So that's why that wasn't showing up. It's kind of ugly though, so let's fix that, right? We're finally back to that bottom part of the lab. So we're going to change the part in that that PHP here. So it's going to be yeah, it's right here, I think. I think it's right here. Let's try it here. Let's see what happens. So all of that stuff. No, not all of that stuff. Yeah, let's keep that because that looks fine. And here's where it's going to get pretty ugly, I think, because I'm going to stick this down here. Whoops, not that part. And I'm going to tab it over just to make it a little more readable. I'm going to stick this down too and tab it over. You don't have to tab it over, but I think it looks better. Whoops, that doesn't have to go that far over. That's too far. Okay, so we're going to leave that, but we want to put some other stuff in. This is why we did that. So system bracket, whoops, I went too far. System bracket quote curl http://169.254.169.254/latest/meta dash data /public dash IPv4. We're going to do some redirection of standard error here. Whoops. 2 forward ampersand 1. Whoops. Pipe grep dash q. You should know it's grep, right? Dash q. Don't remember, look it up. Check the man page. I know it's important in this context. Not found. Quote. That's our single quote. That's our double quote. That's our comma. $RC semicolon. So we're going to run that. We're going to store it in RC. If $RC equals 0, echo none found. Whoops, that ain't gonna work. Let's try it without making errors. Else tab that over just so it looks nicely formatted. Get rid of our extra spaces. It should look better. Assuming I didn't make a stupid typo because it's late and I'm sleepy. Control F5. Oh, look at that. It does look better. Yay. You need to submit some screenshots. Right at the bottom here, right? We need to see your Elastic Block Store device in the AWS console. See that this is running correctly, and just like show me your instance, basically, right? In here. There we go. There, you can actually just click on that. That Elastic IP should be gone from there. Yeah, it's gone. Good. So click on our instance. Go check out some stuff. There's your other screenshot there. I don't know why it says I've got a public IP there. And show me this working. So your web page should work using your router's IP address. So that's it for this week. Take care. Be safe. I will see you in the lab. Have a great week. Bye for now.